Click the links to join channel here over at subscribe so I got a mailbox too for comics. So Russell Brand must be over target because the media is coming for him. Remember when CNN's Anderson Cooper, was he a Vanderbilt or a Roosevelt or one of those famous families, kept repeating the phrase that Trump was credibly accused, but Franks or Biden or Schumer those are unsubstantiated rumors by filthy lying whores. It's weird how if it's like what's the difference between credible and not credible accusations, Clinton or Vanderbilt or whatever his name is. Remember Clinton, the drag of 20 through a trailer park? That was Clinton, super predator Clinton's like, my, the left has changed. The difference between credible and uncredible is the R, the D after their names. So a few years ago, these parasitical media started to write these vague articles about Russell Brand and his clickbait and his wild conspiracy theory videos. And I think I did a video on it last year. But their articles are so vague themselves that you don't know exactly what they're offended by, and partially because they're very aware of not being sued for defamation. And after you read enough of the articles, it works out like this. Brand used to be more on the left, drinking the Kool-Aid at one time. Then something happened to him. If you're a cynic, you'd say that he saw an opportunity to make millions by moving a bit to the right, or maybe it was a legitimate come-to-Jesus moment for him. Honestly, the motivation for a lot of these characters, I just don't care about. If somebody's a legitimate grifter, and you go, yeah, they don't believe the things they're saying, but they're doing good work and bringing awareness to these very important issues. I'm like, hey, fine with me. Listen, I should probably say this later in the video, but if you're a black dude and maybe you're on the fence, like if you're full blown liberal, it's not going to work for you. But if you're someone on the fence, or maybe you're thinking about some conservative issues, and you can talk, there's a lot of money in being a right wing non-white person right now. And again, like if it's half grifting, half not grifting, as long as you're doing good work, go out there. Like there's some serious money for if you're non-white and you can speak and you're vaguely on the right, get out on social media, get out on YouTube, get a channel, start practicing. You can buy a friggin' house out of it. That's how much money is out there for right-wing non-white people. So I mean, because there's like both the left and the right will use you as a shield and a sword, and it's chicken shit. But I mean, that's just welcome to life 101. That's part. Welcome to politics. So whether Brand is legitimate or not, he's definitely not. He's definitely not. Like he's exciting. He's bringing something new to the table. That's why he's got a following of 7 million people on YouTube. Which that's a pretty big number, and more on Twitter. And then he's got a Rumble channel too. So I don't know, but never take online people seriously. When you meet people and you sit down with them and you talk to them in person. At a Comic-Con or at somebody's, having a sandwich with somebody or tea or beer or something, it's like that's the real person. When you're having a cigar and a beer with them or something or a sandwich, that's the real person. If it's not face to face, where you're actually sitting down with them, anything on social media is all BS. And it's not, like I say that, like not for small channels like this. It's an entirely different economy of scale. Big channels. There's so much money in big channels. It's a whole channels once they cross a certain threshold of where the money matters to them, it changes people. Like if this channel was making money, it's like it would be different. It would be different, but it's not, and it's never going to make money. So it's like it's real, it's authentic. When channels start getting into money that is important to them, like it becomes a part-time job, then it becomes a full-time job, and then all of a sudden it's like it's paying the mortgage, and then it's buying rental properties, that kind of money. It's like they're very tied into that money, as well they should be. As long as they're still doing good stuff, that's fine. But you just can't take online people seriously. Big channels are almost all about clickbait and ad revenue, but there is a big but to this. I'm not totally a jaded cynic, though. I know I said some stuff about controlled ops people on the right, and I have to apologize a little bit for that to some of the people I mentioned, because it turns out that they're moving further into more base territory. So if a big channel is starting to drift into getting over target, then the masters will start to issue talking points to the media, ADL, ACLU, SPLC, and the left-wing influencers. This person is getting into sacred water territory, and it's time to steer them clear or just destroy them. So what happened a few years ago was, let me get to one of these articles. was brands started to point out that the media are these lying parasites with a global agenda, and they were clearly biased and seemed to be influenced by these puppet masters, and you shouldn't trust the media when they have a very clear or obvious history of lying. No, you can trust them now. But why do you trust the media and the government now? Oh, because they made me afraid. But if the source of your fear is coming from an untrustworthy source, then your fear is not logical. It's unfounded. Yes, but humans are emotional creatures. We don't think like that. Until you're just so far beyond the media that you see a crowd of people running around like chickens with the skies falling, and they're saying, "Oh, the media told us this," and I go, a couple of years ago, you would have been the first one to say that media and government and the military-industrial complex. It's like these hot phrases for the left wing. You would have been the first to say that corporate media parasites. Why do you trust them now? Because they're saying left-wing talking points. They're still untrustworthy. And I will say that to the right wing. If I don't think there's any mainstream right wing media. Fox and I don't know some like media company they're talking about, like those are owned by the far right or the right wing. I look at them like, those Fox is not right wing. There's no mainstream right wing. OAN is right wing, and they're not in the mainstream. And that's the one somewhat good-sized media company I can think of. One American News or something. It's kind of a religious type of thing, and they're like vaguely right-wing, and they're not allowed on any mainstream platform. Why? Because they're over target. So of course the NPCs in the media get offended about that someone was noticing that they were lying worms, which they are. So they started talking about brands, YouTube, and Rumble channel, but they couldn't point to anything concrete. It was just obese soy boys and angry single cat ladies wringing their hands, worried that they were losing influence, and they definitely are. And the alt media on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, Gab, Telegram were picking it up, which is good. The quartering has more. Jeremy, he's started doing Magic the Gathering. He started with the board games, and he starts pointing out that like some of the people who were behind the scenes of the board games were into kids, and so they banned him. So then he starts a YouTube channel, and is a multi-millionaire talking about pop culture type of stuff. But every once in a while he will get into some real territory. The thing is, he's got more real world influence than many nationally known reporters, because the MSN has name recognition but little actual influence, because everyone knows that they're Epstein Island perverts. And they, they have an agenda. But people like Alex Jones, Steven Crowder, Mark Dice, Paul Joseph Watson, even Tim Pool and a bunch of others have more real-world influence than some soy boy at CNN. A little editing on the fly there. Pussy. We know CNN and MSNBC lies 100% of the time, and these YouTube a-holes shade their stories enough to stay on YouTube, but sometimes you will get a real story out of someone like Salty or Mark Dice, and I mentioned them because it was only a few videos ago. I was like calling a lot of those people controlled ops type of right-wing media, but it turns out that those two specifically have come out and started saying some very... Salty said something. I know I mentioned this. He said something the other day about just crazy bass, and I downloaded the stream because if I get some time, I'll clip it out, which means I never will. But it was so shocking to hear him say European people need to start like in-group preferences and start getting together to do other things with European people and get involved in their history and tribal. It blew my tits off to hear this guy say this, because he said a lot of other counter-signaling type of things before. I mean, it was... I'm going to have to clip that thing out and put it online. It was so... It's just a bizarre thing to hear. And Mark Dice has started coming out and saying some more base things, and so is Paul Joseph Watson, and it's like, so, hey, not every video is, that's why people are so kind of milquetoast when they're talking about people, because you don't want to be, proved wrong a month later, have to walk back statements and kind of shit, but whatever. So, I know Mark Dyson, this leather apron guy, he's on YouTube and Twitter, is saying something real, because the ADL is writing articles trying to get them kicked off of YouTube for saying that the ADL has the power to get people kicked off YouTube. So Greenblatt is trying to, I guess, prove him right. And, it's a little bit iffy even mentioning that. That's how much power he has. So his article is bizarre because it's literally what I just said. It's everything on their site is instantly archived. It's that open, and yet nobody seems to have an issue with it, or else they'll also get kicked off YouTube. And, for big channels, it's money to them. For a channel like this, it's, $50 to $200 a month. So when my time comes to an end, it's not the end of the world. I do sincerely thank people who occasionally drop tips on the channel. That's something else that blew my tits off. Anyway, so they're going after Brand for a while simply because he was growing a following and he was getting left wingers on board. He wasn't some far right Hugo Boss type, dropping slurs and just trying to be like pseudo edgy. He was a hippie who was noticing how corrupt the media is. Anomaly kind of reminded, that's his name. I remember kind of surface level watching him and just having a surface level impression of him, and then I heard him start saying some things which like super truth to power over target based type of things. I'm thinking you are not going to be on YouTube long. I think he got demonetized off of Facebook, and it's like he said it was like $300,000 that Facebook cost him, and it's like he still kept making same based things. I'm like, you Anomaly has got some balls. So do not judge the book by the cover. So he was Brand was extremely dangerous to the machine, and they started to try to take him down. Except he has 11 million Twitter followers, YouTube, Rumble, and probably websites and merchandise sales and all this kind of stuff. I mean, the smartest thing is to Steven Crowder with Mug Club. Probably sells whatever t-shirts and all this kind of stuff. Sell that kind of stuff in-house, like Alex Jones selling vitamins or Quartering sells coffee, and everyone sells coffee and tea and t-shirts and hats and coffee mugs, all that kind of stuff. It's like you do, because one, you break coffee mugs all the time, and everyone drinks coffee and tea and chocolates and this kind of stuff. Everyone wants a t-shirt. Like if you can get a t-shirt for like $23 out, like everyone is willing to buy a t-shirt if it looks cool and to support, it supports the channel a little bit. That's brilliant, because then you're not tied into, and I say coffee is probably the better thing, because everyone drinks a ton of coffee literally every day and that kind of stuff. So then you're not tied into outside advertisers, which is genius. So he's like, guys like that are the new media. So when some Washington Post article writes, Tim Pool drives him up the friggin' wall also. So when some Washington Post article written by a furry otherkin Zer cat boy doesn't have the same impact as these YouTube Rumble people, and Rumble has got to be the fastest growing, is definitely the fastest growing social media platform right now. It's people are doing, they'll do like a 2 or 3 hour stream. They do the first hour on all platforms, Odyssey, Rumble, DLive, and some of the others, tiny ones, and then and YouTube. And then after an hour, they'll turn off YouTube and be like, you got to get on Rumble and Locals and DLive and Odyssey, and you can watch it live there to get people off the YouTube platform. And it's freaking working. Rumble and Odyssey are doing very well right now. So this is the new face of the media, and the mainstream media. The dinosaur media is getting legitimately pissed off over it. You see them kind of panicking because every year they get less and less influence, and they get less and less money funding them. It's like, so they have to start turning into clickbait articles as well. And the thing is, like, the legacy media, they don't have the influence. I'll get into that in a minute. It's like where somebody like Styx has got more influence, and he's demonetized. So he's making his demonetized off of YouTube, which is cool, because like the Salties and the Sticks is, if you want to watch one of their videos on YouTube, you're not going to get any ads. So they're funded by private donations, and they're funded by Odyssey and Rumble monetization, but they're still doing it because people want news that's a little bit less biased, and they're willing to pay for it, which is awesome. I mean, you look at somebody like who's Elijah Schaefer and Styx, and you watch their channels, like it's pretty mainstream, or even Salty, the YouTube stuff. You look at those three guys, they don't deserve to be not demonetized. And somebody at YouTube was talking to Elijah. He said, "Yeah, you're demonetized just because enough people complain, like enough soy boys complain." It's like, but he hasn't said anything, and you're still demonetized. Like, that's not fair. It's like, yeah, wait, you're going to have to get people off of YouTube as fast as possible. Anyway, so with these kind of Washington Post soy articles, other soy boys and cat ladies read those articles, but they're already firmly on the plantation drinking the Kool-Aid. Russell Brand is dangerous. The media puppet masters knew it, and they had to take him down. So they built a years-long story, costing a ton of time and research. So this is how they do a story like this. The parasite reporter starts talking to people around him who knew him when he was presumably drinking and drugging. I think he had a reputation for that kind of stuff. And they were women of the right age. And the reporter talked to them as if the story is in the bag. And they say stuff like, Brand has been credibly accused by several women of stuff, and these victims are coming forward. And even if no one has come forward, I'm saying the reporters are lying. They do it all the time. And the media is going to never talk to the media or the police or the FBI without an attorney present. And the media is going to blow the story wide open, and there will probably be a settlement in the future. because he has millions to pay out. Oh, and by the way, he's against the big, I'll say, farm industry. We're not talking about agriculture, but Google, which means always trust the media and government, which means that he is literally deleting grandma, and he doesn't hate Trump enough, and he doesn't trust the media. Imagine the audacity. Somebody saying they don't trust the media. That's pretty istophobic, if you ask me. I mean, what a Hugo Boss, am I right? The Hugo Boss were so for free speech. And there are accusations of him eating little girls, and there might be $1 million book deal in the future, and then interviews and money and fame if you want it, and money and money and money. So you had a relationship with him. Was he ever high? You guys maybe doing drugs together, and pressured you to do something you didn't want to do? And now it's 10 or 15 years later, and if they had a relationship, and I'm sure he ran through many a woman. They were drinking and smoking and doing other stuff, and maybe he did, maybe he didn't, but drugs are involved, and it's like over a decade later. Like, what do you remember a decade later about relationships while you're maybe high, maybe not high? Even if you're sober, it's like a decade later, you don't remember. If you've been around the block a bit, it's like you don't remember that kind of stuff. You remember the people you were with, but you don't remember the details of being with them. And technically, Brand could, if he wanted to, he could say they snuggled him because he was intoxicated. He couldn't consent. I mean, believe it or not, it's like you have to play the media. You have to play the media that way. So I don't know what happened, but I do know that everybody deserves due process, and I know a media hit list when I see it. The media had to take Brand down, so now they have 4 anonymous accusers who were attacking him anonymously in the media, and famously not calling the FBI or police. They're just taking this case right to the media and stepping over the legal issues. They don't want a legal proceeding because perjury is a felony. That's why nothing happened with the Trump accusers. They just accused them in the court of public opinion. They never actually wanted to make a sworn statement because they could go to jail if it was a lie. The process is the punishment. The media needs to destroy Brand, and what will happen is advertising will dry up as soon as the contract period, or they probably have a clause in the contract for this kind of stuff, so that means it dries up instantly, and it won't be renewed, all based on this anonymous accusation. So Brand now can't pay his team he probably has dozens of people who work on his show. Brand isn't a one-man operation with a cell phone. He's a multi-million-dollar brand. His operating expenses are probably $5 to $10 million a year. People don't realize how big social media is at that level. They're getting the professional level of small networks, and the mainstream media hates that. The mainstream media is centralized power controlled by a half a dozen of these top worms. The alt social media is controlled by Google, mostly Facebook, Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, Telegram, Gab, and then the service providers for web hosting and payment processors and money to in and out of banks and type of stuff. Though I will say with things like Give, Send, Go, and crypto and alternative Gab Pay, alternative payment processors, even Odyssey has a payment system. Things are kind of loosening up a little bit. But it's still less centralized in the mainstream media, and it's impossible for the ADL to police all these small accounts, though they do spend billions with a B of your tax dollars working hard to silence your free speech because they can't trust you with it. They're at least desperate to get people kicked off Google, Chase Bank, MasterCard, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Facebook, and the mainstream sites that they control. They can worry about Rumble and Odyssey later, and they will. They absolutely cannot allow free speech. They have to have control of the mainstream narrative. And the West is in a very interesting crossroads right now. Are they willing to fight for free speech, or do they want to be controlled by the worms in the media and the Nina Jankowiczes? It's hysterical to watch these media parasites essentially chase fame to put stories out. So this girl, Kimberly Ricci, at this media company called Uproxx, wrote one of these attack articles a couple years ago. So you click on her Twitter link and it says the account doesn't exist. So then you look up Uproxx's Twitter page and they have like 90,000 followers, which is weirdly small. Something's not adding up. This venture capital media company is funded to put stories out, but the social media footprint is very small. People aren't buying what they're selling, but they're still funded enough to sell it. So somebody is funding them to control the narrative. It's sort of a stochastic defamation funded by an umbrella company, partially held by a holding company, which is a foreign subsidiary of someone shady. You get the idea. Uproxx has been on Twitter since 2013 and has 88,000 followers, and some of their posts have zero interaction, which isn't that uncommon with the mainstream media, which seems kind of weird. People are not connecting with the mainstream media. which is why the mainstream media is very nervous when people like Tim Pool, the Quartering, Russell Brand, and Mark Dice, Paul Joseph Watson, and honestly, like if you took the top 50 of those guys, those YouTube, Twitter guys, Anomaly, like anyone with over 100,000 YouTube followers, like YouTube, those people go from like 100,000 is when you kind of start getting on the map to like millions. Like they could form their own, like they could all go to Odyssey and Rumble. Like you take the top 100 people, 200 people who have over 100,000 who are vaguely either liberal, libertarian, middle of the road, or right wing, and they could all leave YouTube. It'd be like you could take 500 people if they all formed a group together and went left YouTube. It would be a huge deal. Hard to organize because you're talking about millions of dollars, but it would change the environment overnight, and it would cause an infusion of cash like into Odyssey, Rumble, and Gab. Just a massive millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars would shift overnight. YouTube wouldn't notice it, that because Google is that big, but Odyssey and Rumble and the others definitely would. Anyway, so it is weird that these companies don't have the interaction that like YouTubers have, but the media worms don't investigate the other media worms. They never do. So what happened with Russell Brand? Nobody really knows. And 10 years later, the evidence is gone for a criminal case, but it's the perfect time to destroy him in the court of public opinion for a guy who was getting over target. The crab people took notice. Anyone who gets close gets kicked off YouTube, Patreon, PayPal, the banks, credit card companies. They lose their advertisers. Sometimes they get put on no-fly lists. They can't rent hotels or rent cars. Or even your parents might not be able to rent an Airbnb, which I guess is a private residence rental company like a hotel for Lauren Southern's parents. And ultimately, they're not above putting you in prison or flat out, deleting you in your cell or deleting you outside your house when you're out jogging. Like, if they can get to Epstein and Brunel, and the cameras can turn off both times, it's like, it's pretty obvious, It's like there's some very deep monsters swimming around, and it doesn't seem like anyone wants to deal with them. So they go after somebody like Russell Brand, who's not a monster. I mean, he may be your run-of-the-mill average, one-time drunk and high a-hole who might have, maybe was a scumbag at one time, but you're talking about like a very, very small fish. And then the Maxwell Epstein lists. It's like, yeah, what happened to those lists? It seems like that's kind of a big deal. Yeah, we're not going to get killed over it. Oh, yeah, let's go after Russell Brand. He doesn't have the resources to get to, have us put underground. But, the people who are dealing with the Maxwell's client list definitely do, because several people have already been put underground. Yeah, let's go after Russell Brand. Let's take him down. Okay, if they really want to, they probably will. I mean, because ultimately, he's got all social media. Like, if he left YouTube, he'd be okay. But if they want to put him in prison or something, they can. Like, they can just do it. They can just make it happen. I mean, if they can delete somebody, if they can turn the cameras off in an American and a French prison, they can do almost anything they want if it's worth doing it to you. And somebody who's got 7 million YouTube followers and is starting to talk about these farm companies, these big farm companies, they can just take them off the map if they need to. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. Check me out on Subscribe Star, and I'll see you guys all next episode.